Hi, and welcome to the Becoming Trauma-Informed podcast, where we help you understand how your past painful experiences are affecting your current reality and how you can shift those so you can create your desired future. I'm Dr. Lee, and both myself and our team at the Institute for Trauma and Psychological Safety are excited to support you on your journey. We talk about all the things on this podcast. No topic gets left uncovered. So, extending a content warning to you before we get started. If you notice yourself getting activated while listening, invitation to take care of yourself and to pause, skip ahead a bit, or just check out another episode. Let's dive in. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode. I am very delighted, pleased as punch today. So if you missed last week's episode, I decided that I wanted to do a 3-part series on power and leadership and what we really need as humans to step into our own power, to step into leadership. And so last week we talked about psychological safety and trust. This week I wanted to dive a little bit more into what it means to be a leader and how we can influence other people, help other people in the ways that is really important for us, and how to know how to do that, because that's not something that I don't know about y'all. I remember I took a leadership course, I think, in my undergraduate nursing degree. And honestly, I don't know that we actually talked about leadership in there. Like, I don't think I walked out of that class going, okay, I'm a better leader now at the ripe old age of 22 or however old I was. So I actually have a guest with me here today, Deana Tanner. And the reason she's with me today, I'm going to back up a little bit because when is this coming out? So yeah, about a week and a half ago, I got an idea, and it was one of those ideas where I was like, this idea does not fit. It is not something that like I was planning on doing. It's completely coming out of left field. And I feel like as a leader, it's something that I need to do. And it's a program that I'm offering called Thought Leader. And Thought Leader is a 3-month container where basically I'm going to give y'all behind the scenes access to how I have set up my journey as a thought leader, how I pitch to organizations, how I do public speaking, how I am writing my book, how I podcast, how I do all of the things, and also help everyone who's in there really learn, okay, what are my personal desires around thought leadership? Like, do I want to write a book? Do I want to have a podcast or a TV show? How do I want to share my ideas out to the world? How do I want to lead people? And in leading people, shift their perspectives, change their minds, reframe things, help them see things differently. And so when I put this out, I really wasn't sure how it was going to go. And we had a lot of humans be like, yes, please, which was amazing. We actually have over 60 people in there. We're recording this Friday, so a couple days before this is coming out. There's already, I think, like 65, 66 people in there, which is phenomenal, way more than I was expecting. So thank you, more please, universe. And Deana messaged me and we had already had chats about doing a podcast episode together. And Deana, you messaged me about the podcast and we were talking about, you had a really good topic. And I was like, yeah, come on, let's do that. And I sent you the link for our forum. And then I think I launched Thought Leader right after that, right? And so then you reached out again and you were like, okay, I'm having trouble filling out this form.
Yeah, so I was actually already in Thought Leader.
Okay.
But so when I went to fill out the form, you're like, hey, 1 to 2 lines for your bio, simple, right? And I was like, yeah. Okay, I struggle with this on a daily basis, but now that I know that like I want to show up in the world as a thought leader, how do I pack a punch into these 1 to 2 lines? How do I, decide what's most important in this real estate? And how do I do it without my imposter syndrome and RSD getting in the way? So I sat with it for like 15 hours. And then I was like, please help me because I don't know what to do.
And I was so excited when you reached out because, and we were just talking about this before we started, I have people reach out to me and they're like, I'm so sorry to bother you. And I'm like, you are not bothering me. I have boundaries. So I'm only going to read your message when I'm ready. And I'm only going to respond if it makes sense for me to respond, because I don't respond to every message. Honestly, sometimes people send me messages and I'm like, that is not something that I feel warrants my time or energy replying to. And I felt so happy that you did it, because it's just really exciting when I have people get vulnerable, because I'm like, oh, good. They feel safe. Like they feel safe bringing this here.
And that's what it is. Like, I didn't even necessarily feel vulnerable, because I trust you and I trust your boundaries, because like, this is an area you and I overlap. So like, we both feel really strongly about this. So I see your boundaries and I know that you will not respond to me if it doesn't fall within your boundaries, whether it's for the day or the week or whatever. So like, it didn't feel vulnerable to me at the time. It just felt like, this is the next logical step. I'm joining Thought Leader because I want to know how to be a good thought leader.
Yeah.
And this is a thought leader thing. So ask the expert in thought leadership.
Love it. And that is gorgeous, because I think a lot of people think that they have to figure out how to be a leader on their own. And I'm like, no, absolutely. Please do not do that. Like, it is so helpful to have somebody who is already leading, who is already has influence, right? Leadership, influence, power, like all of that is somebody who has the capability and the trust, like we talked about last week. People trust them to give them consent to change their minds. So I love when people come and ask those questions, because I am really well boundaried, and I'll be like, hey, yeah, I teach that over here. It's $97. Like, if you want to learn it, you can come in, or I have a free podcast on that. Or sometimes it does make sense for me to just be like, oh yeah, like, let me give you 1 or 2 sentences on how to do that. And the reason that you and I are here together is because Deana actually brought up this beautiful idea of, okay, well, why don't we have you come on the call, and why don't we show people the process? Like, we can do a behind the scenes of a coaching call of how we come up with our I help statements, how we decide from a thought leader perspective, like how I want to show up, what I want to say. So I was really stoked, because I was like, okay, now we're going to do 2 podcast episodes. We're going to do this first podcast episode where I coach you and people get to see that and learn from that. And then you're going to have your bio that you can then put into the podcast form for the next episode we're going to do, which is going to be freaking fantastic. So,
and also I just wanted to like call myself in too, as someone who was trying to become a thought leader, of like, I did that. When we were talking about it, you were like, hey, let's do this thing. And I was able to be like, hey, I love this idea. And also I still want to go with my original idea.
Yeah.
And like, to me, I walked around and I was so proud, and I was like telling my partners, like, I did it. Like, she made the suggestion about changing it. And I was like, yes, I want to change it. And also I want to do this other thing. And like, to me, that was like I stepped into the arena, and I have like started showing up as the person I want to be. So like, yay me.
Thank you. Yes. Yay you. Yay us. Like, such good, we talk about bragging in my space is like, well bragged. The thing of it is too, is like, in the thought leader program we have, and actually this was a super interesting experience from a leadership perspective and calling myself in around my own leadership. We have the program itself, and then we had what I had been calling a VIP offer for up to, well, first it was going to be 5 humans. We sold that out. So now it's 10 humans. And when I came up with it, it was another client saying, hey, could I have this instead? And me checking in and going, yeah, actually it would feel really good for me to provide that. And so there's going to be a 30-minute one-on-one call, a 3-hour workshop of how we create your talk, or some people are like, well, what if I don't want to do a talk and I want to write a book? I'm like, great, come in here and we'll lay out how you write your book, because guess what? They're kind of the same process. What do you want people to know? What do you want them to walk away with? What's their step after? Like, it's spoiler alert, it's kind of all the same. And that experience was really good, because right after the 5th spot sold, and I remember typing on Facebook, I was like, the 5th spot sold, the VIP spot sold. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm calling these VIP spots And VIP stands for very important person. And so what am I saying? Am I saying that these 5 humans are more important than the 60 plus that, joined at the $55 rate instead of the $9.97 rate? That's not the message that I'd like to send out to the world, that I value some clients more than others, because I don't. So that prompted a really beautiful thought leadership discussion on my page of like, hey, I'm calling myself in around this. What do y'all use? What do you, fellow coaches, what do you call these things? What would feel good for you to hear? And it actually ended up being a really beautiful conversation that we'll get continued. So now we're calling it the upgraded experience, because it is an upgrade. You're adding more on. It's and that felt very aligned and very trauma informed of like, everyone's important. And if you'd like to have more, then you pay more. And that makes sense. Yes. So at any rate, I wanted to just share that little piece too, because sometimes from a leadership perspective, you're going to notice that you're leading yourself in a direction that you're like, oh, hold on a second. That doesn't feel an integrity. We talked about trust last episode. And like one of the pieces of trust is compassion and caring. And what I realized was, using that terminology, it didn't feel like I was conveying a level of caring trust and effective trust to other people that weren't opting into the upgrade experience. So just wanted to share that piece because I think it was helpful. Let's do some coaching. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's do it. All right. So Deana, tell us about what work you are currently doing in the world.
So this actually ties into the last thing that you said too, is because that's how I got into, yes, thought leadership fits for me, is because what I had tried to do before was to create a community experience. And so I rebranded, I came out as Queer Amory to serve queer and polyamorous humans. Mm-hmm. And it was to be a community experience, like interpersonal connections, community, all that stuff. And that's great. And I love it. Turns out that's not my wheelhouse. And so I was, again, in search of like, okay, what am I? Who am I? How am I in this world? So my goal is to kind of redesign what the baseline human experience is supposed to be in a healthy way. So like, hence, and working with you actually is perfect for me because I have the Healthy Humaning Institute, and a lot of what I want to create works on the same business model that you use and the way that you're building things. So like not just your thought leadership program, but like your business as a whole is like the perfect place for me to be, to learn how to run what I am trying to create as well. So I want humans to like, most of what we're taught is not helpful, not useful, and the exact opposite of what we need in order to be healthy, not just with ourselves, but with other humans. And so kind of redesigning what it means to be a healthy, authentic human, and then applying that to other people who also have the same things as, boundaries, and they have autonomy and they have their own emotional intelligence, and like how to make it work together in a healthy way.
Okay. I'm chewing on all that because there's so much goodness in there. First of all, so needed, right? Have you seen that TikTok where the guy is like joking that he needs an adultier adult to help him with the problem that he's experiencing? And every time I see that, it makes me laugh because I feel that way a lot of like, is there somebody else who's more adultish than I am who could like show me how to do this? And it also is a compassion moment. It reminds me that I have been taught that I'm supposed to know how to do things that no one ever showed me. And so what I'm hearing from you, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of resonance between what we're doing, is like nobody teaches us about trauma. And also a lot of times nobody does teach us about boundaries or about how we connect with other humans in ways that feel really good for us. So like definitely a topic that needs brought to light and more people need to hear about.
Yeah. So like I have like 5 components. I'm still working on the language, so I haven't quite solidified it yet, but there's 5 components: boundaries, personal responsibility, autonomy, communication, emotional intelligence. Those are the elements of what I have dubbed the BRACE method. And
Ooh.
I know. And so for a while I just had that. But I was like, I was talking to Selkie, my graphic designer, who was helping me with my website. And I was like, that's great. I love the brace method. I love the, wordplay and acrostics and all that stuff. And I was like, but it's not actually a method. It's just 5 components that we need. So then I went back and I redesigned it into an actual method, which I am going to be debuting on my new website that's in progress right now.
That's awesome.
So not only is it the areas that we need to look at and work on, and I call it the shit that you should have learned in school. Like, this is the shit that you should have learned in school.
Yep.
And if you had, you'd be doing just fine right now. And because we didn't, we have trauma, which is where you come in.
Yeah, that's where we like tag team in the ring, right? Like,
exactly. So then having a whole methodology that tells you how to go through to get to a healthier place with each of those elements.
I love that. Okay. So you actually have a lot of clarity already on the work that you're bringing to the world. So really this is, how do we distill this down to a few sentences? Now, actually, I want to help you do 2 things. I wasn't planning on this, but we're rolling with it. So let's actually talk about this. There is a difference between the bio that you're going to put on a podcast, or when somebody asks for the bio when they introduce you as a public speaker, or, before your book comes out. That bio is going to get tweaked depending on who you're talking to, right? So when I put a bio, when my team sends a bio, when I'm going to do a professional healthcare conference, we're going to play up the nurse practitioner piece a little bit more than, and the clinical practice piece, and the I taught in academia for several years piece, than when I'm doing a talk for entrepreneurs. Right.
And that's part of what tripped me up in the bio. So because the questions are the bio and then like a little bit about the work that you do. So we actually just reverse them and starting. So I don't know how to distill down the work that I do. Like that is not my strong suit at this point, but also thinking about the bio, like I totally understand that you tweak it just like you would a resume, depending on what company you're sending it to. So I don't have the professional background. I don't have the educational background that makes it easy for a lot of people to be like, oh, I did such and such degree, or I did such and such teaching, or so then I'm like, I'm a queer polyamorous human mom of 3 in a blended family that's been doing leadership education for 25 years. Like, but then the RSD and like the
imposter syndrome. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So we've got 2 pieces kicking in around that, because really, when you think about this, right, you saying I am a individual who's been living this truth publicly for a really long time, right? I have experience here. I'm in a blended family. We've got these kids. Like, that alone speaks to that piece of your experience. And then the leadership part, like you just said, I have experience in the leadership sphere for, how long did you say, 20 years?
I started in leadership education 25 years ago, but like the last thing I did in it, I was 16. I had my 16th birthday at a leadership conference. And so like the gap in between where I've done, and I have helped the people and I have done the things, it's there. But then when you try and tell people that, then it starts, well, I don't have any degrees. I don't have any, like, how do I make people believe that I am as good as I say I am, when the only thing that I have to tell them in 2 lines is, I'm a mom and I have kids, and, there's these personality or these things about me.
Yeah.
And so it makes it hard to feel like I'm putting out something that's substantial enough to back up the work that I do.
Okay. So when we think about this from like a rejection sensitivity and an imposter syndrome perspective, like, these are 2 of the biggest things I hear, both from the larger thought leader scale of like, I don't have any original thoughts. I don't have enough experience to do this. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say. How is this any different than the other 8 billion stories on the planet, right? All of those are variations of invalidation of your thoughts, your opinions, your experiences, your ideas, right? So that's the first piece. The other piece is like that, or I should say that's the larger sphere. And then you can see it distill all the way down to the bio. Well, I don't know. My bio is not going to be as good as Dr. Lee's bio because Dr. Lee has degrees and this and that. And I can't. The other piece is the rejection sensitivity, which is I'm also afraid that other people, when I put this out, are going to find it invalid, right? Or they're going to be like I'm having the thought of who do I think I am? And other people are also having the thought of who does she think she is?
Right.
So they're actually flip sides of the same coin, right? The imposter syndrome is, and by the way, the definition of imposter syndrome, if y'all don't know it, is doubting yourself despite evidence. Doubting yourself despite evidence to the contrary.
And it's funny too, because like, if you were to tell me right now, hey, I'm going to put you on a stage and you need to talk for 10 minutes about the work that you do, I could absolutely pull that off without a problem. But asking me to write 2 lines of a bio in the privacy of my own home that I can edit over and over as many times as I need, I sat there for 15 hours before I finally called you for help and was like, I can't do this. I don't know what to do.
And I love this. I actually tell my business clients or my one-on-one clients, I'm like, if you sit there for longer than 15 minutes and you can't figure it out, message me. And I love that you sat there for 15 hours. Like, I don't love that. I actually really don't love that. But it just speaks to how much we can get in our own heads around this.
And that's why I wanted to do this with you too, is because if this is happening to me, then there's somebody else who is probably equally brilliant who is sitting in front of another form with 1 to 2 bio lines required and going, what do I do?
So bios, we really want them to be, first of all, they're not nearly as important as people put, like they're not, the weight is not on your bio, right? So we need your bio to be mediocre or better. A mediocre bio is fine because please go ahead.
Can you give me an example of a mediocre
absolutely bio? So a mediocre bio would be, think of a back of a book jacket that's just boring, right? Stephen King is a 60 something ish guy who lives in, I don't know where he lives in wherever with his, what do they always say? Wife, kids, and 3 fur babies. In their spare time, they enjoy cooking, reading, and yada, yada. Like, that is a mediocre bio.
Okay. See, that's so helpful for me.
Yes.
Because I need a very specific,
and I love that. So we could just say, Deana is may I ask how old you are?
36. If
okay. We're the same age. Yeah, we're the same age. Okay. So Deana is a 30-something, mid-30s, queer, polyamorous human who lives in this part of the world. We won't tell people exactly where. In this part of the world, and, has a blended family with her 2 partners and kids, right? And she has 25 plus years of leadership experience and absolutely loves speaking to anyone and everyone about it, right? Like, that's a fun, right there. That's it. You can really roll with that. Like, that's enough. And if you're going on a podcast about entrepreneurship, we can talk about the fact that you run the Healthy Humaning Institute. If you're going on a podcast where you're talking about polyamory, we can highlight the fact that you're in a polyamorous relationship and have been for however long. Like, we can pull out those pieces and highlight those a little bit more. And we don't have to, right? People just want a sense of who is this person that's coming up here? And you can even have fun with your bio if that's fun for you. What I've started doing, the sentence that I use a lot in the second part, and this rarely changes, is Dr. Lee uses her 15 plus, it's getting close to 20, 15 plus years of healthcare, education, and psychology experience to serve and support others in creating healthy, more mutually beneficial personal and professional relationships. Something around that. So there's a couple pieces that are in there. I let people know that I have all three of those expertise. And traditionally, when I'm describing the credentials, I say I'm a certified clinical trauma professional. So people already have that piece. But the 4 pieces I'm bringing in are trauma, healthcare, education, psychology. So people know, okay, she's got that. And then I talk about the fact that my mission is to help create safer and more supportive spaces, more mutually beneficial relationships. And then I also bring in the personal and the professional piece. As long as that's there in some way, shape, or form, those are the parts that matters to me.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about a mediocre bio. There is also a sentence that is very helpful for thought leaders to have. And that sentence is the I help statement. And this is a little different than your bio, because your bio gives people just a general idea of who you are and what you do. Your I help statement is designed to be less accurate and less informational and more intriguing.
Okay.
So here's one of I have a couple. Here's one of my I help statements. I help humans understand how their past painful experiences are negatively affecting them in the present moment.
I like it. I've heard it a time or two.
Right? You've heard that. I help people understand how their past painful experiences are, pardon the language, but like are fucking up their day to day. Right? Now, that's pretty vague. It's also intriguing because there's not a lot of words there. It's a simple sentence. And when people hear it, what do you think the first thing they ask me is?
What's a past painful experience?
What's a past painful experience? Or, well, how do you do that? Or, tell me more. Actually, one of the most common things I get is, say that again. Right? Because their brain is like, that was good, and I need to hear it again.
Mm-hmm.
That some I help statements are, I've seen them be like 2 words. I help you make moves, right? I help you make moves. Now, that is generic AF. And if you are in a room of entrepreneurs who maybe struggle with taking action, that's probably going to be pretty intriguing to them. One of the other things that I like to say is like, I help you unlearn things.
Mm-hmm.
I help you unlearn things so that you can remember who you are.
I have definitely said that to people before.
Right? Tell me more. That's what people will say. Tell me more. How do you do that? And then from there, what I learned is to tell people's story. So if I say, I help people understand how their past painful experiences are messing with themselves today and what to do about it. And they're like, tell me more. I'm like, okay, so here's an example. So I had this client, right? And they were really, really struggling in their relationship. And they kept calling in who they referred to as narcissists. They were like, I keep calling in, I keep attracting narcissists, and I don't know what's going on. And, my relationships are great for 4 months, and then they completely just go off the rails. So what we did is we looked back at their past painful experiences, at how they were raised, and what their caregivers taught them about love, about all of these things. And what we realized is that this person had some tendencies around people pleasing, and they felt what they were taught is that we are supposed to rescue the people we love. And they were taught that their needs come second.
Mm-hmm.
And so by having all these past painful experiences where their needs never came first, they learned that the way they get love is to put their needs second. So of course they're going to call in people who love to be in relationship with people who will put their needs first.
Yes, that makes sense. Okay, so that whole thing is actually really helpful, because one of the things is like when people ask me to describe or paint, I was talking with Selkie the other day and I was like, you're asking me to paint a picture, but like my brain cannot compute that, because when in real life, when I go to paint a picture, I stare at a blank canvas and I put one color on it and that's it. And so when people are like, paint a picture for what you do, my answer has always been, well, it depends on the person. Like,
Yeah.
But having that, like you say, tell a story or give an example, that changes things for me, that I can understand, that I can follow.
Yeah. And the cool part about this is that you can have multiple stories in your back pocket, depending on where you're going. So like, maybe I wouldn't tell that relationship story at an entrepreneur conference. Maybe I would tell that relationship story at one of my women's empowerment retreats, or, when I'm marketing that. In a business setting, an entrepreneurial setting, where I am talking with people or pitching myself to people who might want to have me come speak to their group or organization, I might tell a story about an entrepreneur that I've worked with that had some past painful experiences around money and their caregivers, and having fears, subconscious fears around making more than their caregivers. And so every time their business got close to making more than their caregiver, they self-protected, aka self-sabotage, by tanking their business. So when we could identify that and help that person shift, then they were able to break through that financial ceiling and, go on to make a lot more money, because it no longer felt unsafe to their nervous system to do so. So you can take these different stories and have them for the different places that you're going. And you can even think before you go, what story do I have that, remotely applies to this, and just chat it out for a minute. And then, and you can just share it. And that story, if you clocked me, probably took, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. So this whole thing, you give them a sentence of the I help, because these people don't want your bio. They don't care what you do. Or I shouldn't say they don't care what you do. They don't care how you do it, and they don't care who you are. What they care about is, how can you help me? And can I see myself as a client of yours?
And I would imagine too, like in a space, like if you're at a conference or something, they're not going to retain all that extra information if you give it to them anyway. Even if they are interested, that would come later anyway.
Yeah. If I started off, if somebody walked up to me and said, and actually, y'all, this is another thing to think about. When people walk up to me sometimes and they say, what do you do? This is actually an I help statement, but it's disguised, because what I do is so novel. I say, I run a trauma institute. They're like, what does that mean? Right? Most people, when they hear that, they're like, tell me more. So it doesn't even necessarily need to be who you help or how you help. It can be, if you're an astronaut, right? If you've got a job or a role that's like pretty unique, you could say that, and that would be an exception to this I help statement. Because if you're like, I'm an astronaut, people are gonna be like, tell me more, right? If you are somebody that when you bring it down, it's, yeah, I'm a coach or I'm a consultant. Okay. What you do is probably incredibly interesting, and those are not niched or specific enough to pique someone's interest to go, tell me more.
Mm-hmm. And that makes sense.
So that's where you get to lean into, for some of y'all, your statement gets to be really easy, and you get to say, this is what I do. Like, this is my title. For the vast majority of people, and I only use that in spaces where I know people know what trauma is. If people don't know what trauma is, I don't use that. And actually, funnily enough, I don't use that when I'm in healthcare spaces, because if I say I run a trauma institute, a lot of healthcare providers assume that I mean physical trauma.
Yes.
And they're like, how do you do that? You're not a surgeon. And I'm like, no. So I actually stopped using that there, because think about it. That wording means something different to that population. So you get to remember as you're creating these statements, it is more about what is going to feel really interesting to this person and what is going to invite them in or intrigue them enough that they want to ask more questions. The goal is to get them asking you questions back. It's not to give them all the information so they go, oh, okay, great, thanks, bye. Because I'm guessing you'd rather have a conversation where they keep asking you questions and then they're like, okay, well, like, how do I work with you? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Then them understanding exactly what you do and being like, okay, great. But like not having resonance or not feeling like, oh, she could help me or she could help this person I know, or, oh, she'd be such a good speaker at this event.
And that's kind of how I landed on healthy humaning, because you were talking about adulting, like I needed to be your adult. I figured that using that language, it would be clear enough that I was talking about being a human, but also that language we've become accustomed to, like needing like more or better or something like that. So I figured it would be clear enough that people could understand I'm dealing with healthy human type stuff. And then also, well, what does it mean to be, what does healthy humaning mean? Like, what do you mean by humaning?
Yeah, I think that now we get to like look at this, because if you say, I help humans be more healthy, how many times have we heard that?
Right.
Right. So if you say, I help, and it's any human, right? You don't care who walks through your doors as long as they have the goal of feeling more holistically healthy in their human experience.
I said that exact same thing the other day.
Okay. So what if you said something like, and again, you're going to hear this, it's really vague and it's not accurate. I help people have a more enjoyable, holistic human experience.
That is, that's pretty close to what actually my website says at this point.
Of course it is. You know, and you can play with it. What's going to happen is I think you get to say you help people and put some adjectives or some verbiage around the human experience, because that's really what you're talking about. You're talking about people having a human experience that feels better. That's exactly
what it says. Is a better life is possible. That's literally like the headline on my website. And you deserve to experience it.
Yeah. And it's the experience part, because here's the thing. If you just said, I help humans be healthier. Well, okay. There's a lot of, like, I could go downstairs and probably clean out my fridge and my pantry. I could not drink this wild cherry Pepsi that's next to me. I could, trade it out for water. There's a lot of changes I can make to my life to be healthier. And let me tell you what, they're not going to improve my qualitative human experience, because you can pry my Pepsi out of my cold dead hands, right? Like that is not something that I am ever. There are things that I am willing to give up. There are things I'm willing to change. There's things I'm willing to prioritize that do give me a better human experience. That at this point in my life is not one of them. So,
but Diet Coke.
Right. And in case anyone's like, how many Pepsis does Lee drink a day? It's just one. And it makes me happy, right? Like it brings me joy. It brings me happiness to have that. So yeah, I think you get to play on that human experience piece. And really, I help people have a better human experience, a more holistically enjoyable human experience. Because then that is going to prompt well, tell me more. What does that mean? How do you do that? So the bio is, okay, I've got a gist of who they are, who she is. The I help statement is, oh, tell me more.
That makes so much sense.
When I talk to CEOs, when I go speak with healthcare organizations, what I say is, I help healthcare leaders create organizations that their patients and employees never want to leave. And that they're like, oh, tell us more, right? Retention and satisfaction are two of the biggest metrics in healthcare. Employee retention, employee satisfaction, patient good patient outcomes, patient satisfaction. Those 4 things, I cannot tell you how many times I had those drilled into my head. Now notice, I didn't say satisfaction or retention in that, but I said they never want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And that cues their brain to go, oh, tell me more.
So my equivalent then would be something along the lines of like, they never want to settle, because most of my clients are settling in at least one area of their life, if not multiple.
So I help humans stop settling in all aspects of their life. Might be something, right? Like I help humans elevate, or I help people elevate their human experience and stop settling.
Yes. I actually had, when I was branded as Queer Amory, I had a bumper sticker or whatever made that was like, raise your fucking standards. Like that's what I do.
Well, and that might honestly, in the right place, you might just say, I help humans raise their standards in all aspects of their life.
I like it.
And that is going to, I'm even thinking like I help humans raise their standards without something around like without dampening their experience, right? Like I help you raise your standards without you having without having you have less fun. I help you get healthier without, you know what I'm saying?
I help you raise your standards by having a more authentic human experience.
Great. I help you raise your standards for your life by creating a more authentic human experience.
And this whole thing has been like laying it out in the way that I need, because so my business turned 2 on Wednesday. So like
Happy birthday.
I've been in a lot of different circles, like trying to find the right coaches, trying to find the right mentors and everything that work for me. And so like there's this inundation of information, and it's like, you need to have a clear message. You need to have you need to be able to tell the how, you need to be able to paint the picture. What I haven't really seen, and I think this is why Thought Leader appeals to me so much, is the breakdown of like, this is the piece that you need, and this is the place that you use it. This is the piece that you need, and it goes here.
Yeah.
And so like, I have had many iterations of like how I help clients do the things, but where do I put that? Where do I use it? Where do I say it?
What I have found is I would say the vast majority of my clients, they really do not care how I'm going to help them. They care that they trust me. They care that I feel safe as somebody to lead them through those exercises. They care that if how we are doing the thing starts feeling bad, that they feel safe to say stop, that they feel safe to say, I need something different. They care that I am going to be deeply attuned to their levels of regulation while we're doing the thing. That is what they care about. And I think that this is a really crucial piece, because so many of us try to, on our sales pages or in our talks or on sales calls or wherever, when we are trying to lead people, we try to do it from this place of ensuring that, again, go back and listen to last week's podcast. They try to ensure that they have the first 2 forms of trust, which are cognitive trust, like I'm capable and I'm consistent, and they forget that they need the caring and the honest piece. And like most people feel vulnerable when they are looking to someone else to help them change their minds or help them change their behaviors, to lead them in a different way from a thought perspective. And so we do want you to establish cognitive trust. We do want people to understand that you're capable and that you will show up and be consistent, that they can trust that you're going to be there. And I think a big piece that a lot of public speaking courses and business spaces miss is people need to know that you care. And people need to know that if they need something or there's an accommodation or something's not working, that if they bring that to you, you're going to be like, oh yeah, okay, Let's figure that out.
It's funny because that could be like a different variation of that, like who I am, what I do, how I help type thing.
Yeah.
Is because multiple of my clients have said that working with me is like having a paid practice relationship. Because one of the first things that I do is I tell them that it is safe for them to ask for what they want, because I have good boundaries.
Yeah.
One of my first conversations with any client is, you can message me anytime that you want. You can ask me for anything that you want. You can say for anything that you want. You can request any single thing that you want, because I have the boundaries and I will honor my own boundaries. It is not up to you to decide whether or not I'm willing to do the thing.
If you're not watching this on video, I'm like literally dancing in my seat. And so many people have never been in a relationship like that, where you can own what you need, you can own what you desire, you can ask, you can reach out at any time. The communication line is open, and you trust the other person to say yes when they want to say yes, to say no when they want to say no, to say not like yes, and let's, zhuzh it a little, which is exactly coming back to like coming full circle to the first conversation we had, right? So that's also something, right? That if you're in a space where maybe you're going to be doing a talk on relationships, I help people communicate their needs and create their boundaries.
Yes.
That might work. Do you see how like you can really tailor this depending on what it is that the people in front of you need and want?
I allow people to experience what it's like to be in a healthy connection with another human. I'm going to go take a bow now.
I know. I was like, but I like that practice piece too. I allow people to practice being in relationship with a well-boundaried human.
Mm-hmm.
And experience I like the practice experience both of it, right? Because I think you can use either. Like I both of those are phenomenal. I got chills when you said that last one. That's how I was like, okay, we got there, because chills.
Yes. I think that I have some version of that to go somewhere on my website too. So I was circling in the right place. I just needed you to be there with like the little flaggy doodads at the airport to be like, park here.
Well, and thank you for saying that, because if you're coming into Thought Leader, if you're listening to this podcast and you're either already in, or you're like, oh, I want to do the upgrade so I can do this, have this version of a call with Lee, or you're like, okay, now I want to join, or I'm not sure. You are close. You already know. Like I said, one of my help statements, I help people unlearn and remember what they already know that people told them and taught them to forget. You are close, and it's probably just having a 15-minute conversation, or it's asking a couple of questions, or throwing your statement in the group and then us chatting about it for a minute. Like, it probably isn't, it's not that far away. It's probably really
15
close.
hours worth of...
It's not 15 hours worth of thoughts. And so like, please save yourself that time and energy, and like, just come in the group and learn that. So thank you for being willing to model this for people and have this conversation. I really appreciate you. You are going to come back. We are going to have that second conversation. So be on the lookout for that, y'all. If you're interested in Deana's work, we're going to put her information in the show notes so that you can find her. And now her new bio will be in there after she writes it up and sends it back to me. And if you're interested in joining Thought Leader, we would absolutely love to have you. We start April 3rd. It's a 3-month container. If you're listening to this podcast on May 3rd or June 3rd, even, like, still join it, because you're going to get so much out of it.
Come play with us.
I know, come play with us, because it is. We're going to play. Like this conversation here was just play. We're just spitballing back and forth and finding what works. And that is a really necessary component of this. And if you'd like to have your own one-on-one session with me, then if we still have upgrade experiences, we'd love to have you. So you can send us an email at hello@institutefortrauma.com and say, I'd like the upgrade experience. And if we have spots, we'll get you in. So Deana, thank you. I love how you're also, if anyone's watching the episodes, like I'm playing with my pen in my hands, you've got your like squishy, we're over here just being kinetic humans. I love it.
Yes.
All right. Well, I will see y'all next week. Next week's episode, Deana will be back with us soon, and just sending y'all well wishes and hope you have a fabulous week, and we'll see you next time. Bye y'all. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Invitation to head to our show notes to check out the offers and connections we mentioned, or you can just head straight over to institutefortrauma.com and hop in our email list so that you never miss any of the cool things that we're doing over at the Institute. Invitation to be well and to take care of yourself this week, and we'll see you next time.